Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello, and welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show. October is Mental Health Awareness Month, a time to learn more about something that touches us all, directly or indirectly. As leaders, we should understand the significance of mental health, explore ways to foster resilience, and offer strategies, insights, and actionable steps to support our team. My guest today, Michelle Steffes, is a published author, speaker, corporate trainer, and podcast host. And as the founder and CEO of IPV Consulting, she's also the creator of multiple coaching and training programs that help people win by changing their brain and discovering the power within. Welcome back to the show, Michelle Steffes.
Thanks so much for having me, Ken. It's a joy to be with you again.
Yeah, glad to have you back. So it's October, and that is Mental Health Awareness Month. So for leaders who might not think this affects them, why should everyone pay attention to mental health?
Well, first of all, we're living in a different generation, but even more so, we're living in a different era. In fact, according to some statistics, and I love statistics, so bear with me here, almost 9 in 10 Americans, 87% now are saying they're more stressed than ever. It's up 59% in the last 2 years. And that's according to American Institute of Stress, a 2022 survey that they conducted. Interestingly, if you break those stats down, 47% say they're anxious, 44% say they're sad, and 39% say they're angry, and some just opted for all three. Do you know anybody like that?
Well, yeah, it definitely feels like that hits pretty close to home to some degree, and probably for everybody when you step back and think about it in those terms. So what are specific signs or signals that we should look for in ourselves or in our teammates?
I think that's a great question, Ken. I'm glad that you asked that because sometimes it's hard to pick up on it, especially when we're busy and we're focused on what we need to accomplish on a day-to-day. And I think, too, we can be guilty of not really examining ourselves as often as we should and paying attention to the small signs that we may be showing. So some things like reduced attention, where someone's talking to you and it's kind of going right over your head, and it happens a lot. That also falls in line with reduced memory. So you're forgetting things that you didn't used to forget anymore. Even maybe having to read something 5 or 6 times and you still don't even know what you read. You're just constantly distracted. And then that, of course, can lead to some anxiety, can lead to emotional instability, increased health issues then follow that quickly. And of course, poor performance, making a lot of mistakes. These are all signs that we need to pay attention in ourselves as well as our team members.
Okay. Now, you use the phrase changing their brain and discovering the power within in a lot of your materials. What do you mean by that? Tell me more.
Well, that's one of my favorite things to talk about because, it's great to just tell someone, you should or you shouldn't. But we end up just shooting all over ourselves and everybody else. And that's not always going to be the most healthy resolve, right? So when we understand kind of, I guess, the mechanics or the science behind why we're having the problems that we're having or what we can do to adjust it, it's a huge game changer. And I've found that again and again, not only speaking publicly, but corporately and working with individuals one-on-one. So I said all that to say this to you. You have the ability to rewire your brain, and it's called self-directed neuroplasticity. Now, for those out in your audience that don't know what neuroplasticity is, no less neuroplasticity, self-directed, is basically you have 100 billion neurons in your brain. I'm going to give you the short version of this. And at 400 billion actions per second, you're wiring in neural pathways and neural networks. Now, those networks serve us throughout our lives. So everything from learning how to walk, talk, eat, sleep, drive, to the job or the skill sets that we have, and even things like trauma are wired in. That's why there's such a thing as PTSD. That means the memories keep coming back again and again and again. So when you kind of see it as a construct rather than just a, oh, you should or oh, you shouldn't, it's sort of a different perception in taking it from the level of just hoping things are going to change to actually creating a new schedule, a new foundation, new building blocks that can rewire the brain. Because the good news is that you can constantly rewire it throughout your life. In fact, use it or lose it is a good way to look at it, because old neural networks that you're no longer using are going to literally denature. So a good example for me would be algebra. That ship sailed over 30 years ago. Okay. I couldn't do an algebra problem now if it meant to save my life. And so true with, neural networks that we're no longer using. So what I teach clients and what I teach companies and what I teach leaders is that we have to start to look at what kind of building blocks and incentives and initiatives can we put into play on a consistent basis that will cause us and our teams to literally rewire our brains, i.e., self-directed neuroplasticity. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. Well, partly because I've read your books and we've talked about this. So for
Right.
people that didn't necessarily land, definitely pick up Michelle's book. It's all in there. So that's how we can kind of rewire the brain
Yes.
and change the brain technically. So back to those symptoms that you said we might notice in ourselves or in others. When we do notice those things in ourselves or in others, what action should we be taking?
Well, that's another really good question. And it's not really necessarily a simple answer, but it's not as complicated as we might think. Now, I'm not suggesting that if somebody is, in a really bad situation where they need help with a counselor, psychiatrist, or whatever, that they shouldn't go. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. So I'll preface it with that. Okay. But what I am saying is that if you're noticing little signs and symptoms like this in yourself or in the people that you care about or the people that you work with, then it's time to begin looking at methods that might help you. So some of the things that I recommend is that you start to look at reframing. And cognitive restructuring is often the two words that I like to use for it. And that's familiar in the field of therapy, but it's so simple. What you want to do is you want to just think about the issue. And of course, this is going to have to be done after the fact. You can't necessarily do it during the fact in the beginning stages. Think about the issue. Think about the feelings you had in that issue, whatever it was that happened to you, and then pull your feelings out of it and think for a second about some objective observations on that issue. So in other words, try to look at it through different eyes and then write all this down. And then finally come up with, be I guess, your own coach looking from the outside in and decide what positive response might be most effective in that situation. So what I'm saying in short is think about what you were thinking about when it happened and then process it on paper. Now, the more you do that, the more you wire it in, just like I just described to you at 400 billion actions per second. Day after day, the more that you do that, the more that you'll wire in a new way of reacting and you won't need the paper anymore. Okay. But I would also suggest things like gratitude, because gratitude has been known multiple times over to help people resolve the kind of the sad feelings that they have inside because they're looking at what they have instead of what they don't have. So having a gratitude list and really beginning to work on some of the things that are I guess, present when the issues are happening. In other words, notice the triggers that are causing you to react in ways that are hurting you and begin to unwire that through different methods that could reverse it.
Okay, so if we start noticing some of these kind of initial symptoms, I guess I'll call them, then as a leader, we can, if we see them in ourselves, we can take some of these actions. You're talking about the gratitude list and writing down the things that are concerning us. And if it's someone on our team that we see, we would suggest that they do some of those things. When it seems like it's deeper than that or a bigger issue than that, what's your suggestion for especially leaders in the workplace when you see someone on your team who's struggling and it seems like it's more than they need to work on their gratitudes or they need to be writing out the things that are causing them stress? When it's kind of that next level, what are some symptoms of that and how should we approach that?
Well, when we're looking at the team as a whole, in other words, you're asking me if it's a cultural issue where it's kind of become really prevalent that there's something going on that's underlying, or are you asking more on an individual level?
Yeah, definitely want to get to the culture part of it if it's more widespread. But I'm suggesting right now just that an individual on your team seems like they're having a deeper issue, a more severe mental health concern, and so I want to know how the leader could approach that to get them the help that they need.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, basically, you want to sit down with an open heart and an open mind And you want to be able to ask them questions in a curious way. So in other words, you don't assume, don't walk into it with your own opinion of where they may be standing or why maybe their performance is sliding, or whether they're having a lot of health issues and you don't understand why. All those symptoms that I mentioned earlier that you want to look for, and begin to ask sincere questions about their human needs. And once you have explored enough, and I'm not saying being nosy or poking your nose in their business, what I'm saying is to have those one-to-ones consistently to build a trust relationship and begin to ask questions about how you might be able to help them and what you might be able to do to encourage them more or to support them more in their role, and allow them to express any human needs that they have as well. And by doing this and then offering them some real solutions for it, or appointing somebody that can, you're not only going to strengthen that trust with that person, but you're also going to be able to provide for them exactly what they need in order to come out of that. Now, obviously, as a leader, I would also encourage you, don't expect instant results, but that you decide in advance you're going to be patient with the process if you find that they're valuable enough to keep on the team, and that you're going to give them all the support that they need, be it human or work related.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, mental health tends to have kind of a negative connotation, or at least people are reluctant to bring it up. Physical health, we're all about that. People are happy to tell you what's aching today or what they just had surgery on or where something hurts. But when it comes to mental health, that's not something we feel is okay to share. And so knowing that people are going to be naturally reluctant, how, again, as a leader, can you come alongside someone on your team and encourage them to draw them out to get those real mental health issues on the table so that they can get the real help they need?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that can be done is group training. Okay. Now, when I say group training, that can be defined a multitude of ways, but people are going to feel less inhibited when everybody is doing it. Okay. So that might mean you're having a 20-minute meeting and you go around the room and you have everyone list what they're grateful for. That might mean that you go around the room and you ask everyone what their goal is this week, and you ask maybe a professional and a personal goal. So everybody is stating what their professional and personal goals are. Or it might mean something more intense where you have a trainer come in, or you yourself conduct a training that's an hour or 2 hours long, or even a half day or a full day retreat, where everybody is involved in emotional intelligence and resiliency exercises, and you break them out into groups and you work with them either virtually or in person. It can be done either way, where everyone's throwing their chips on the table and they're all discussing these needs. And if you've got a good facilitator involved, they're going to ask the right questions. They're going to have the right material so that they're kind of, I guess, front and center in terms of dealing with those health issues, dealing with those mental incapacitators or reluctancies that people have, to discuss those things. And once they get comfortable enough with the fact that, hey, I'm not alone in this, I'll give you one quick example of why this makes sense. Oftentimes, when I do a training, whether it's a short one or a long one, I'll put up a poll and I'll ask them what their one major thought inhibitors are, the patterns that they continually notice in their minds that hold them back. And I'll light up the poll in a matter of about 2 minutes. They'll do a word cloud on the screen and everybody will see, you know what? I'm not alone. Everybody else feels that way too. And they'll start to watch the feelings or thoughts they're having get larger on the screen and realize it's not just them, it's everybody.
Yeah, that's so helpful. And I do want to come back to that conversation around the culture. If it feels like it's broader than just one person that you're feeling as a leader, that you've got a cultural issue or across the board with your team. And we'll do that on the other side of the break. So stay with us on the Clarity Advisors Show, and we'll be right back.
Is your business where you want it to be, or on track to get there? Clarity Advisors helps business leaders improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success. We specialize in helping you streamline your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Call or text Ken at 616-822-2998 to have a complimentary 12-minute call to see what some clarity could do for you.
Okay, welcome back. to the Clarity Advisor Show. Today, we're talking with Michelle Steffes, CEO of IPV Consulting, and we're focusing our conversation on mental health awareness. So, Michelle, we touched earlier on we've got more of a cultural issue where it's not just an individual's maybe struggling with some issues, but the whole team seems to be struggling. What as a leader, how do we tackle that?
Well, that's a really great question. I think really we need to first keep it real. So, if we're not willing to be transparent and realistic about what's going on and what we're noticing, and I'm not saying again, we're not gonna do that in a way that seems to make people want to run and hide. We're gonna do it in such a way that, hey, you know what, we're struggling too in certain ways, and we truly care. And I'm gonna have some book recommendations later on that can really, really help with that whole mindset, because it is a mindset. But the leader needs to come across like they genuinely care and they're passionate about helping their people. And they present this in a way that it gives people an opportunity to talk about it. So keeping it real, building that trust, like I had mentioned earlier. So that's through one-on-ones, how we relate on a day-to-day, how we come across as a leader in every situation that comes up, conflict management, all those types of things. And then really begin to instill confidence that we believe in our people to come through this. Let them know that you're there to answer questions, to equip, to empower, to provide resources if resources are necessary and they happen to be struggling in areas that maybe you can't help them. Offer clear solutions and give them opportunities to give you feedback on those solutions. So don't just stick it in front of them and then say, hey, I hope this works out. But find a way to follow up so that you can make sure that it's working if they didn't make initial comments or feedback about what the solutions are. Encourage and support them along the way. Let them know it's okay if they make mistakes. Let them know that, you're there with them and you got their back. And if they need time off or they need some time working from home instead of at work for a period, that you're willing to give them that, the flexibility. Definitely practice a lot of active listening skills. So active listening is repeating back what you heard. It's asking them to break it down. It's asking for clarification. It's really being involved in the conversation from their perspective, not just your perspective. I would say even probably more so from theirs. And then, of course, we've already said this, but meet those human needs. I can't say that enough, especially in this day we're living in. The human needs are important. And just to give you a better idea, when I say that, what I'm talking about everything from sick kids to, having to go to that, say, counseling appointment, to, giving them some time off, to allowing them to work from home. Those are all ways in which we can meet those human needs. But we want to equip them to make successful decisions so that they can begin to see success, not only in their work, but as it bleeds into their personal life because you're showing genuine interest.
Sure. You touched on that, in this day and age, you've been doing this a long time. Have you seen an uptick since, say, 2020? And how has that manifested itself? And how has that changed how you approach people or what you work on when you're working with clients?
That's a great question. And yes, I have. I've been studying these statistics for over a decade. And I used to be able to say 7 in 10 are stressed. Now it's definitely the 9 in 10 that we mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast. And the issues are a little bit different, before, where maybe the stress was more, overwork or burnout. And that still exists, mind you. But now we're compacting that on top of societal chaos, adversity, too much saturation of the news cycles, social media impressions, as well as the pressure, even social media addictions. And some of the things that their kids are facing are so incredibly different than, years previous. So we're looking at the whole picture here. Now we're just looking at just what's happening at work, or, why we're getting behind on some of our projects or our deadlines. We're looking at everything that could be the causation of that, and responding again with a different heart, a different mindset, a different attitude, rather than, why isn't this getting done, or why are we not meeting this deadline, and if you don't get it done by this date, then this is going to happen, where we just issue ultimatums. But rather trying to dig a little deeper, ask the right questions, discover what the human needs are, and become their hero, in effect, by paying attention to meeting those human needs.
Yeah. And you mentioned things at home. This isn't just a work-related
It
issue.
isn't.
Obviously, wherever people are, they could be suffering from some of these symptoms. So again, as leaders, how do we help our teammates when maybe they're struggling with children with issues, or maybe adult parents that they're helping or working with or living with that are struggling with mental health issues? How do we help? How do we help equip our team to help themselves and help the people in their lives? And also, how do we help the people in our lives that aren't at work?
Well, yeah, I think some of the things we've discussed already definitely could be applied to that question. That's a great question. But I also think that we need to equip them in ways. And again, going back to what I said about corporate training, inserting, and one of the examples I guess I can use is I know Corewell Health participates in team huddles frequently. And in those huddles, they have opportunities to express gratitude. They have opportunities to, share a goal, or whether it's a personal or professional goal, and then to applaud each other and hold them in account. They have mentorship programs. They have coaching programs. They really try to build a culture where people feel safe, they feel supported, and they feel like family. And that's why I want to make this book recommendation at the end, because I really think the key to all of this is for leaders to pull back, and whatever kind of leader they've been in the past, to be willing to be a different kind of leader. And when they do that, they're going to notice that team members are going to start to come to them more often. Hey, my kid is acting up. Do you have any suggestions? And even if they don't talk from that personal of a level, you might pick up on little, I guess, innuendos that may indicate they're having problems at home, where then you can go ahead and ask those curious questions, and know that they do trust you enough to maybe share just enough so that you can provide them with the support and the help that they need. But the biggest mistake we can make as leaders is to just continue in the same way we've always led, assuming that that's going to work if it's already created cultural damage and it's not supporting the human needs of our team members. So beginning to look at your own leadership and begin to change how you approach your team, and put some heart into it, is when everything begins to change, not only for you and your relationship to your team members, but the culture as a whole. And that, my friend, is where we start to see changes in their personal life as well.
Oh, that's such good advice. So, if I, as a leader, want to set that good example, be up to speed on these issues, be able to bring advice and counsel to people looking for that, if I'm feeling out of control myself, what are some things I can do to regain control for myself so I can be the leader that my team needs?
Well, I think first of all, and I absolutely love that question, Ken. I think first of all, we need to realize that people are going to pay attention to who we are, not what we say. And so if we aren't leading the way by example, it's going to be a lot harder, a lot more of an uphill battle, and you may never even reach the pinnacle if you don't pay attention to that. So that's probably one of the best questions you could have asked. So we need to first kind of pull back and maybe get an assessment done on our leadership, have somebody look at it with, I guess, uncompromised eyes, if you will. So there's no bent or bias in any way, shape, or form, and have them be those eyes looking in your corner to help you to see where the areas that you need to change. Once you've done that, then you've got to be willing to invest in yourself. Now, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I offer all the leaders I work with is to look at this in the form of the habits you keep, because it's the habits every day, the little things you do every day over and over and over again, that create the you today and the you tomorrow. Okay. It's not the big things. It's not reading one book. It's not going to one seminar or one training. It is the little things that you repeat again and again and again over time, and the routine that you keep that designs who you are and determines your destiny, as well as how you affect other people. Does that make
Well, I think
sense?
that it does. And I think that leads right into the last question that I had for you, which is, resilience is a word that I hear you use. How do we best keep ourselves resilient, especially in these times where it
Yeah.
seems like there are so many more stresses and it is different than it used to be? And we start the day at a level 5 and work our way up to 9 by the end of the day, rather than work our way up to a level 5 from a 0. It just seems tougher. So what are the things that we can do practically to stay resilient?
Well, again, I'm going to go back to the habits and expand on that a little bit, because if you get up in the morning at the last possible moment, and you, I'm just meaning the audience in general.
Or it could be
Uh,
me.
it could be, right. It could be any of us. But if you're getting up at the last possible moment because you hit the snooze, or you just think your sleep is more important, and I'll get back to the sleep. Hold on. Don't change the channel at this point, because we're going to talk about why sleep is important. I'll touch on that. But I'm going to show it to you from a different perspective. But if you do that and then you get up and you're just rushing through the morning in a massive stress bath, and you're pushing the kids to hurry up, get out the door, and you're trying to get all your stuff together and get everything done, and then you end up forgetting something, you get caught up in traffic, you get to work, and now you're in this massive fullness of stress. And that's going to cause all those symptoms that I mentioned to you before, because it's the neurochemicals that create, like cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, all those stress chemicals that are just on the rise and bathing our brain and causing us to be forgetful and have brain fatigue. If you do that and you think you're going to be a good leader, it's time to change those habits. That's my point. Okay. So it's time to look at, from the moment you wake up in the morning till you close your eyes at night, and really be honest and assess what you're doing and what it's doing to you personally, in terms of your resilience level, but especially how it's affecting you to be the best leader and example you can be. So even just small changes, like getting up 15 minutes earlier, so you can slow down a little bit and be a little kinder to everybody, and take some time to maybe reflect, or listen to an audiobook, or do some different things to begin to change your demeanor, begin to rewire your brain through that self-directed neuroplasticity, and be able to shift your chemistry or your state of mind so you can show up to work differently. Okay. So, and that's just one small piece of what I would say to a leader in regards to changing that resiliency. And that includes things like we mentioned in terms of gratitude and reframing or cognitive restructuring, which are practices we can maintain throughout the day. It's all those little bitty things. Now, going back to the sleep, because I don't want to neglect that before we move on, Ken, is sleep doesn't necessarily have to be from midnight until 6 in the morning. What if you back up your sleep time? And some people will say, well, I'm just a night person. Michelle, I cannot move that's how I've always done it. Well, guess what? The fact of the matter is, you can rewire your brain in any habit within 21 to 30 days, and you can oxidize those habits, meaning that they become more a permanent part of your subconscious, in 3 cycles of that. So that's about 3 to 6 months, somewhere in that frame. Okay. So I say all that to say this. I've worked with many, many clients over the years, thousands of them, and I have helped them to shift their routine from a night person to a day person by their willingness. And that's the key, their willingness to look at it from different eyes and begin to practice small changes, little ones, in increments of small amounts, to shift their wiring to become the person they want to be. Okay. So I'm not saying neglect your sleep. I'm saying look at it from different eyes and decide, from a systems or structure point of view, what might be most effective for you to not only accomplish your goals, but become that person that you want to be. Okay. So it's much like if I come into your office and I say your office is inefficient, I would want to maybe move your printer, change your systems, the way you've got your shelving set up or your filing, so that it's more effective. Kind of the same thing, only people are a little more sensitive when it comes to their personal life, and they shouldn't be. Because if you really are serious about success and about being more resilient and being a better leader, you're going to have to take a look at all of it. Does that make sense?
It does. It's so good. Well, Michelle, besides your books, which are such great resources for all the things that we've talked about, and you teased it a couple of times, I'm eager to hear the book. What are some other books that would be good for us to take in to get more information on mental health?
Well, that's also a great question. And one of my favorites is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And that one teaches you to take the changes in little bitty increments. And he teaches a lot of the things that I teach. But the other one for your team that I would highly recommend is Bob Chapman. And he has a book called Everybody Matters. And his leadership style is spot on. And he has taken his company to insurmountable achievements in terms of income, but also in the 90th percentile in terms of engagement and team members that work together effectively and never want to leave the company.
Well, that's terrific. And we'll get those links as well as the links to your books in the show notes. Michelle, this has been fantastic. Just a masterclass, and the conversation I was hoping we could have, especially this month, October, of mental health awareness, to help leaders get equipped for recognizing things in themselves and for their teammates, and to help people win. And so I appreciate you being here to do all that. What's the best way for people to reach out and connect with you?
Well, you can go through my website, ipvconsulting.com. That's IPV, that it stands for integrity, people, and vision, the three most important components in success. And I have a contact form that way, but you can also reach me on LinkedIn or Facebook, Michelle L. Steffes. Any of those methods would be great. I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. And we'll get those in the show notes as well, so it's easy for people to find you. Michelle, again, thank you so much for being here. This was really, really helpful. And I know people got a lot out of it, and it's always a treat to spend time with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. And that brings us to the end of another Clarity Advisor show. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisor Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.